to the cozy corner of cinema. This is episode number 138, being recorded on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 6:56 p.m. It is a lovely night. It's a chilly night. I took a shower tonight, so feeling all nice and cozy. It's a wonderful kind of feeling to be and to have that cozy mentality, talking about films, talking about books, talking about life, our daily blessings, all of that. It's just a wonderful, wonderful time to be alive, and we don't want to take advantage of it. That's incorrect. You don't want to take granted for it. You want to take advantage of it. And I'm not even going to stop the recording. I'm just going to roll on through because mistakes get made all the time and you can't undo them. But you can learn from them. All right. So many films watched lately. There's been so much to talk about. And now that we are nearing December, there's a lot of films where people are going to be talking about and guessing, what films are going to be nominated for the Academy Awards in February. It's in February or March, I think, that the Academy Awards. I always forget. But people are talking about, is this film going to be nominated? The Brutalist or Anora, Sing Sing. What's that Nicole Kidman one coming out? I'm blanking on the name of. But it's fun to speculate, it's fun to talk, fun to hear people recommending you films, talking about, have you seen that one? You gotta check out that one. I'm gonna be sleeping on that. And oh man, it's always kind of a hassle though. Some of the films that don't get released until a few months into the following year can be kind of tricky. I remember I saw The Zone of Interest really just kind of in time when it finally got a release here. It was bizarre. It's playing out in California, I think, for like a month or so. And then it didn't, I think it was only playing like a couple theaters. And then it got like a wider release like a month later or even later on than that. I'm not sure, but it's kind of a hassle. I'm looking at like some of my favorites of the year. The thing I was talking about last time. And I know there are just some films on here I know are technically 2023 films. I'm thinking of films like Monster by Hirokazu Kurita. And The Taste of Things, and Totem, for example, was a great film. Perfect Days. These are all technically Robot Dreams, of course. All technically 2023 films, but when it comes to the year end, sort of looking back on the favorites, I'm not even going to bother trying to separate them. These were released theatrically here in 2024, or at least released here in 2024, because then I'm thinking like Nowhere Special, which is technically 2020. I watched that a couple of years ago, and it finally got a release here. So it's like, do I count that for 2024? Is it, And I don't think it really matters, but it's something to think about nonetheless. So, but now's a good time to kind of speculate and think back to the films that really kind of stuck with us this year. It's been a lot of good, a lot of not so good, but the good ones we're going to keep alive through word of mouth, through general talk, through recommendations, getting recommendations, and giving them, of course. But man, oh man. All right, well, let's talk about a film from 1992. We're going to talk about a film directed and written by Jeffrey Wright, Romper Stomper, starring Russell Crowe, Daniel Pollock, Jacqueline McKenzie, Alex Scott. I guess the big three would be Russell Crowe, Daniel Pollock, and Jacqueline McKenzie. In terms of big three in the film, Russell Crowe obviously would go on to have a very prosperous career, being a lot of mainstream Hollywood films, a lot of big films. Would do films like L.A. Confidential, and of course Gladiator, with timely discussion with Gladiator 2 arriving this weekend at the time I'm recording this. And actually one of my favorite films of the 2010s, which is The Nice Guys, 2016. But Daniel Pollock, who tragically committed suicide soon after filming. He'd only done a couple of films, but this was his last feature before ending it. And then Jacqueline McKenzie, who actually, the writer-director, Jeffrey Wright, he would come back to do, I don't know if it was a mini-series or what, but he did a continuation of the story in 2018. If the page will load, I can tell you all about it. So it's a mini-series, about 6 episodes. So some of the actors return with let's see here. Yeah, Jacqueline McKenzie, Dan Wiley. I'm sure I could probably find the list of comparisons right there. But either way, this is a film from Australia. Notable film. We have Russell Crowe and his gang of skinhead neo Nazis. They're running around Australia. They're causing problems. They're beating up on people. I mean, it's a very unsympathetic look at all of these characters and sort of the daily their daily lives and the trouble that they get into. Oftentimes, very chaotic trouble. They're ganging up on one guy, and they don't like how the neighborhood is being basically integrated with some of the Asian community, and then the Asian community as well. They are wanting to fight back. So basically, it's just senseless violence. It's just racial violence, people who hate each other, and perhaps maybe for good reason. They're all beating the hell out of each other, and it's just a never-ending sort of chaotic, sort of nonstop fight, really. And when talking about this film, you can bring up films in association with other kind of street films. You can look at it as sort of a 90s. Not necessarily a Clockwork Orange, but in a way you have these guys running out there in the streets, causing problems, going to war with some of the other people. I mean, in the Clockwork Orange, you had, really a civil war for the first part of it after a certain point. But you look at other kind of street films of the type. Actually, another film I was comparing it to, or this thinking about in the context of this film, is actually an underappreciated film from 2011 called Combat Girls, which was, I don't remember where it was from, but it was that this girl who was part of this neo-Nazi sort of gang. Actually, I don't even remember if they were neo-Nazis or not. I think they were just dicks. Or maybe they were, I have no idea. But then she ends up having to take care of this young kid who's like a refugee and the problems that become with the gang and all that. So it's great to watch these films where we get sort of the seedier underbelly of a lot of these city areas, a lot of these locales where you actually have all this gang violence going on. You have all this sort of senseless violence against one another. Thinking of another film, I guess, would be like maybe The Believer from, what was it, 2003, I think? Or 2001? It was, yeah, with Ryan Gosling. I think probably The Believer and Combat Girls have a bit more in common, but I'm just thinking of these sort of skinheads sort of on the run sort of movies. I mean, I guess maybe an obvious comparison would be something like The Warriors, but because these guys are trying to get away, they're being chased down by these group of guys, and they have to. The movie makes a solid point. You never really sympathize with any of them. I mean, they're all pretty terrible people. I mean, they're just beating the hell out of people for no reason. They're just causing problems. They're breaking things. They're being assertive in a bad way. So even though with a film like this, although there are times where you maybe lean more towards some of the characters than with the others, I think there's a fine line to kind of draw that people often maybe mistake for being somebody to relate to, because oftentimes I do feel that maybe some viewers are not used to protagonists in the films who are not meant to be likable, or because no one in the film is really likable. I mean, there are characters who are maybe act better than others, but ultimately they're all pretty bad. I mean, it's the same way where in something like Cannibal Holocaust, where all the characters are despicable. All the characters who they go into the jungle, they're taking advantage of these people. But really, when things start to go bad, you're not thinking to yourself, at least not immediately. You're like, yeah, well, I hope they all get killed, this and that. You are thinking to yourself, damn, man, what if I was in this situation? What the hell would I do? And I think I was envisioning myself at a certain point in this, where I'm like, man, if I was in this situation and I knew that things were going to go bad, what exactly do you do? It's what I think what I mentioned about with The Believer and Combat Girls is that there is a question of faith in both those films, and maybe more so a question of ideology than it is faith, because with Combat Girls and The Believer, which is funny that with The Believer, with how popular Ryan Gosling has got, it seems as though this film has been pretty less spoken about, but I think it's a solid film as well. Ryan Gosling, who plays this character who is a skinhead kind of neo-Nazi, who, he's very anti-Semitic. He really, is a really angry guy. At the beginning of the film is him just messing with this guy on a train. He finds out, I don't remember if he finds out he was Jewish or he knows he was Jewish, but he starts to have this really kind of push and pull of his faith, of his Judaism, and then his anti-Semitic beliefs. And it's a really solid character film, and with a really memorable ending. The ending has always stuck with me as something very, almost kind of chilling in a way, where it's like, "Ooh, what are we doing here, man? This is a real cool idea you got going on here." But Romper Stomper as well. I think what the directing is, I can't even speak right now. What the directing does so well here with Jeffrey Wright's directing is that there's a constant flow of chaos and of energy when you have these scenes on the street where they're either beating up on a guy or perhaps it's a whole fight back and forth. The camera does a really good job at creating this sort of menace, this sort of energy that really kind of keeps up the flow. That even when there are down moments, there does have this sense of like at any moment one of these characters could really snap off and really just kind of frighten you. Where it's like they're your friend 1 second, but then they're not really loyal to anybody except for themselves and their own beliefs. It kind of reminds me of something like the Nil by Mouth. We have the character in that film where he's just constantly on the edge of just exploding, and then when he does, it's like frightening. He turns into like a rabid dog. He's like pounding on the door and screaming, and it's a very frightening performance. But that's a wonderful film as well. It's actually one of my favorite films that I've discovered in the past couple of years. I got to pick up that Blu-ray from Sony. I know that has an overseas Blu-ray as well from, I think, the BFI, but that's a great film as well. Also, Ex-Drummer, I guess, as well, was reminding me, and it ends up turning into films it reminds me of, but Ex-Drummer from 2007, which is a German film, I think, but is able to capture these chaotic sort of violent sequences as well, really kind of showing a really dirty underbelly and grunginess of it all. Ex-Drummer, I think, as well, excuse me, drinking the seltzer here, is a very underseen film. I really like that film. It's often kind of grouped onto these, most disturbing films list, and it really isn't that. It's just a chaotic film. There's a lot of violence in it, but there is a lot of intentional humor as well. That I think that if you're looking for something quote unquote more disturbing, and I think you might be disappointed. But Romper Stomper is a really, really good film. I just found myself completely invested in, these characters whom you wouldn't normally want to, you wouldn't normally care nor want to kind of be watching them on this journey, because after a certain point you're thinking, well, forget about them. These are all bad dudes, but at the same time it's like, damn man, you are on this journey with them, that you are just still curious to see their outcome nonetheless. And I think the ending of this is actually very good as well, where it's more of a ultimately like a not quite as big of an ending as maybe one might expect from the rest of the film. Does involve a couple of characters having to kind of resolve this, that ultimately you'll have to see where that ends up. But it's a really solid film, man. This is one that I don't think it was Russell Crowe's first film. I think this is like his third or fourth, but definitely he's able to really kind of show really a lot of his fierce kind of anger. He's a very scary character in this. And sort of the changing of the times, these neighborhoods being gentrified, and maybe not even gentrified, but other kind of people and other kind of cultures going into it, and how certain people react to it. In this case, which is very violent, very ugly, very aggressive, and sort of this never-ending sort of conflict between them. It's funny. I'm looking at like this box set here, man, and it's these Scum, Romper Stomper, and Chopper. These three kind of Australian films. Now, Scum is the only one that I haven't seen. I know that has a Blu-ray from Indicator, I believe, or I think it's Indicator. But Chopper, I've talked about before on the show. Chopper is much more comedic, but does have these moments of darkness and seriousness with the violence. That I think, maybe wouldn't, I don't think would pair that well together, not that they need to, but in terms of these really solid kind of, I don't want to say action, but these kind of street sort of Australian films, I think that both of them are really worth your time for sure. So yeah, Romper Stomper, that's good stuff. I really did enjoy that. And going from there, actually, we can talk about another 90s film that actually might be from the same year, 1992. Let's talk about something a little lighter than chaos in the streets of Australia. Well, maybe this isn't too much lighter, depending on who you're asking. Let's talk about Unlawful Entry, 1992, directed by Jonathan Kaplan, starring Kurt Russell, Ray Liotta, and who was the wife? Madeline Stowe, or is it Stowe? I don't know, but that's okay because we're gonna talk about it anyways. Yeah, she was looking familiar, man. You know, I thought she was. I thought she was. Oh my gosh, who is the woman from Weeds? Oh my goodness gracious! I thought it was Mary Louise Parker. Looks a lot like her, but no, actually, Madeline Stowe was in 12 Monkeys, if you remember her from that film. She's been in a lot of stuff. Unlawful Entry is a fun film. It's a ridiculous film. It's nonsense. It's actually total nonsense, but it's a lot of fun. I wrote that this is the kind of film that you would catch your dad watching halfway through, or catch your dad watching in the middle of the night, and you're halfway through and you go, you know what, I'm going to watch this film because what I was taken aback by with this film. Excuse me, sorry. Bringing the seltzer here, and boy, oh boy, it's tasty. It starts off, Kurt Russell, he's, I forgot what he did for a job, man. He's, I don't know if he was an architect or what. I don't remember. But anyways, he's living in his house with his wife, everything's going well, and then a burglar shows up. Now, no one wants that, right? So burglar shows up, and he does nothing about it. He's like, my gosh, man. You think back to the movie Nobody that came out a couple years ago with, oh my gosh, wow, man, I tell you, I've been working all day, and I go to turn this on, and I forget everyone's names. It's Bob Odenkirk, but that film as well, his family gets, a burglar breaks in, he has the chance to shoot him, and he doesn't shoot him. But in this film as well, they get the cops over. You have these two cops, Pete and Roy, played by the great Ray Liotta and Roger Mosley. And I was taken aback by first, in a positive way, where Ray Liotta's performance is so good. I mean, it's just so charismatic. He's so likable. Now, I knew this was going to turn into a thriller. And I thought, all right, well, they got a great lead with Ray Liotta. He has such a likability to him. Just his natural charisma just rubs off, man. Because he's talking. You're going to notice a bit of a jump there. The microphone got disconnected for a second, so I'm going to try to stay on track. But anyways, man, Ray Liotta, he's a likable character. He's telling them what they got to do. And things are looking up, man. Kurt Russell and him are getting along. He takes him on a ride along. And Ray Liotta and Roger Mosley, they have a great back and forth. Now, I won't talk about everything that's going on in the film, because I think part of the fun is watching it yourself. But basically, something happens, and Kurt Russell's like, hey, man, I got to stay away from Ray Liotta. Now, Ray Liotta, because he's playing a madman, he just can't stay away from this damn family. And I will say, it's a nonsense film because, the inciting event that's supposed to really kind of push him over the edge, where it's like, oh my gosh, man, he really is a madman. It's like, well, I don't know, he's not that crazy, man. I mean, I think it takes a little too far, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, at least for Kurt Russell's reaction, because, I mean, Ray Liotta, he's likable, and I think they almost made him too likable and charismatic, because then at the point where he's got to become a madman, like a violent madman, you go, okay, I guess we're doing this now. But it's a lot of fun. It's great seeing. I like Kurt Russell in more of these dramatic roles as well. I love him in of course, the John Carpenter stuff. I mean, I know those are dramatic as well, but where he's not playing it up as much. I mean, besides The Thing, really, I mean, he's great in like Escape from New York and all that. But that's not quite the dramatic performance I'm talking about. Here, I think he's really good. I think Ray Liotta's really good, and this sort of push and pull of this relationship. Ray Liotta is trying to get close to the wife, and they try to go into like some of his backstory with Ray Liotta, talking about why he might be doing this, why not. I mean, even early on, after him and his partner sort of leave the house, his partner saying to him, man, like, don't even think about it. He's like, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on here, man, with these two? But it's got this real kind of not dark tone really until the end, because it really is, it's kind of like almost darkly comedic in a way. The way that Ray Liotta is just going out of his way to mess with Kurt Russell. I mean, just petty things, man. Just get a bunch of parking tickets, just causing problems to his car, and it's like, man, what is the goal? What is the outcome of this whole situation? I mean, in these kinds of films, it brings you back to something like Straw Dogs or something. Not quite as good as that, but these well-mannered, well-to-do sort of working guys, and they just get pushed too far, man. They get pushed too far, and they have to kind of stand their own ground now. Straw Dogs is less of a revenge film and more of just a character being pushed to a certain point. I think that's one of the big things with Straw Dogs, that it's often grouped into being a rape revenge film when it's really not. I mean, there really there's no revenge. It's a character who is well, I don't want to get into the whole plot of that film, but anytime you see it on a list, man, you just got to go right past it, because it's definitely not that kind of film. But this is one that it's just ridiculous, it's nonsense, but it is a lot of fun. It's one that I've seen a lot of these kind of '90s thrillers, and a lot of them are varying quality, to say the least. But this is one that I thought was much more enjoyable than the average one. It's not great by any means, for the fact that this was almost 2 hours, and this flew by at a pretty brisk pace, is something to say. So there's two films you got there from 1992. Unlawful Entry, much lighter than Romper Stomper. But there you go. Now we're getting to the holidays, man. Plenty of films still to be released on home video. Plenty of films still to be seen theatrically and also released theatrically. November has been having, or Barnes & Noble in November has been having the Criterion sale. Plenty of titles have been picked up, so hopefully you've been picking some up for yourself, for loved ones, acquaintances, all that. And there's still a couple of big titles of these to be released later this year. I'm thinking of like Paper Moon, Peter Bogdanovich, who I talked about him recently with his documentary, or the documentary that I'm blanking on the name of right now. I had a longer title, and then the No Country for Old Men 4K. It's coming from Criterion. And actually, I never, somebody was saying that, well, I guess I already knew this, but that Miller's Crossing release is apparently edited down by 2 minutes. Now, I don't know what those 2 minutes are. Somebody else was talking about that, and that was one of the reasons why I hadn't picked it up, was for that reason. I don't know. I think it's been released on Blu-ray before, either previously in America or perhaps even overseas, so I don't know. It's weird when, I mean, directors and, filmmakers, they're allowed to do whatever they want to their own films. I'm thinking about recently with what Francis Coppola has been doing with a lot of his films. He's been doing new versions of them, new edits. So he's done, of course, 2 versions of Apocalypse Now, Redux, and the final cut. The Godfather Coda, Death of Michael Corleone. And then recently, he also did Betwixt Now and Then, I think is what it was called, or Betwixt something. But he also did one for One from the Heart, which is another film that I had watched fairly recently, and I think it would actually make well, that also had I'm sorry, going off topic a little bit, but that had I have that 4K, which has the original 1983 cut. I don't know what year that was. I thought it was 83, but I could be wrong about that. But 1981, I apologize. But it also has the new reprise cut. But the good thing about all of these is that it would at least have the ability to watch the original version included. I don't know how many more films Coppola will do this of his work. I do feel there are some, like The Conversation, like Apocalypse Now, that are perfect in their own right. They really don't need to be touched. But with One from the Heart, that was one that I watched recently. And it's a very good film. It's one that's considered sort of a failure in its own right. I mean, a failure, like a critical failure, and especially as a financial one. That was one that American Zoetrope had put a lot of money into, and the film has a really kind of specific feeling with its setting. The whole setting was done inside of the American Zoetrope sound stages, and it looks like it, but in a way that, in a bizarre way, it kind of feels like more of a grandiose sort of play, where there are, it's a soundstage masquerading as Las Vegas, and there are some tracking shots where the roof of the soundstage is very clearly in the shot, much so in a way where it has to be intentional. I can't imagine that, if you're trying to block off and make it not look like a soundstage, that one, you wouldn't nearly have the tiles of the ceiling on there. And then two, just some later on sequences when they're looking over the city. I mean, it looks like a matte painting. I don't know if it actually is or not, but it doesn't look like they're actually looking out into a distance. It looks either like a projection or a painting. Actually, more so probably a projection than a painting, because I think you would at least see some things move. But it was reminding me a lot, not just because it was new, but it was reminding me a lot of Megalopolis in a way where Coppola is taking this really kind of big idea, but he's making his own kind of unique setting for these events. So, I mean, in Megalopolis, you have New Rome City masquerading as New York City. Or I think it was just New Rome, I don't remember what it was. But then in here, Las Vegas is masquerading as Las Vegas, but in a way where this feels a lot smaller, a lot more like you actually you don't quite feel the sense that there are actually streets that they can run down any street. It all does feel like they are on a soundstage, but I think that gives it a unique feeling in its own right. But I'm glad, the whole point I'm kind of getting at is I'm glad they at least give you, that Coppola at least gives you the option to watch these films as is. You know, a couple months ago they were showing the final cut of Apocalypse Now theatrically, and I decided not to see it because by that point I had just recently rewatched the 4K I'd seen that 4K once before, and then I was watching it with somebody, and I rewatched it again, and the fact that it was so fresh in my brain and that was playing fairly soon, I made the choice to not go ahead and see it, but I would be curious to see, because that's just the full final version, to my knowledge. I think like that runs over, it's either 3 hours or runs over 3 hours, which is essentially just all the footage. To my knowledge, I'm not sure if it actually alters anything from the Redux or if it is just its own kind of thing. But either way, it's probably safe to say that that Megalopolis will probably be Coppola's last directed film. So if that's what he plans on doing is either these new edits of his films or anything of the sort. I've been seeing on like panels for like, festivals and all that, or at least talking at festivals, not just for Megalopolis, but seeing him pop up here and there. It's fascinating, sort of the last stage in his career and what he's been doing with it. But there's still a couple of Coppola films I need to see that I haven't. But I think I've seen at least a good portion of them. Some of his 80s stuff I have not seen. I'm trying to think. I can probably actually pull up a list here. And actually, I don't know. Actually, let me see if I can find this list here, because then I can actually at least run through. Let's see. What have I seen here? If it'll load. Okay. I've seen The Bellboy and the Playgirls. I've not seen Tonight for Sure, The Terror, Dementia 13, or You're a Big Boy Now. I've seen Finian's Rainbow. I've seen The Rain People, The Godfather, The Conversation Part 2. I'm sure The Godfather Part 2, good lord. Apocalypse Now, One from the Heart. I have not seen The Outsiders. I've seen Rumblefish. I have not seen The Cotton Club or Captain EO. I've seen Pegasus Who Got Married. I've not seen Gardens of Stone, Tucker. I have seen The Godfather Part 3, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I've not seen Jack, The Rainmaker, or Youth Without Youth. I've seen Textro, I've not seen Twixt, and then I have seen Megalopolis. So, probably about 50-50 or so. I don't know. If somebody's keeping track, maybe some more, maybe some less. But a fascinating career nonetheless. And on that note, I'm actually running out of time here. And I was going to talk about one more thing, but I will have to save that for next time. So, thank you so much for listening. Use these chilly nights to your advantage. Make sure you are working on your art, on your craft, on whatever it is that needs to get done. It is your life to live, so live it the way that you see fit. All right, take care, and until next time.